Good morning, my dear students. My name is Dr. Ashutosh Jain, and today we are going to study in brief and in detail about endocrinology. That means what all factors and what all things come under the topic endocrinology, what are the role of the hormones, and overview of the system and other things. Okay, now moving on forward. Overview of the endocrine system or the endocrinology system. All the physiological activities in the human body are regulated by two systems. Physiological activities से मतलब क्या है कि all those activities which are concerned all those activities which are concerned with the physiology of the human body. These two systems are the nervous system and the endocrine system. Nervous system, that means the CNS, ANS, PNS, that means the central nervous system, autonomic nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system. And the endocrine system, that means the system that is wholly and solely concerned with the hormonal things. These two systems interact with one another and regulate the body functions. Interact, that means these two systems, they are interacting with one another. They are regulating the functions of the human body. For example, in from the birth of the infant, right from the birth of the infant up till the age of the 18, there is growth of the human body. That means the linear growth. That means increase in the height of the human structure. This function is regulated by the growth hormone, which is released from the anterior pituitary gland or the adenohypophysis. But wholly and solely the uh, uh, growth hormone, the precursor is the growth hormone releasing hormone, which comes from the hypothalamus. The endocrine system functions by secreting some chemical substances called as the hormones. So, moving on forward, and to add on, these hormones, they are basically being secreted from the master endocrine gland. The master endocrine gland is the hypothalamus. Endocrine glands. Endocrine glands are the glands which synthesize and release the classical hormones into the blood. That means पहले ही मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दिया कि growth hormone releasing hormone, and again this hormone goes to the pituitary gland and releases the growth hormone. So this is called as the classical hormone, also called as the ductless glands, because these hormones secreted by them are released into the blood without any duct. They are released directly. So following is the list of the major endocrine glands. You can note it down. Major endocrine glands are as follows: pineal gland, pituitary gland, thyroid gland, parathyroid glands, thymus gland, adrenal glands, pancreas, ovary in the females, testes in the males. Pineal gland secretes melatonin. Pituitary gland, major hormone is the growth hormone. Posterior pituitary gland secretes oxytocin and ADH. Ovary secretes estrogen and progesterone. Testes secrete testosterone. Pancreas secrete insulin, glucagon, somatostatin, and pancreatic polypeptide. These are some of the examples of the hormones secreted by these major endocrine glands. Hormones secreted by the, now these are the list of the hormones secreted by the major endocrine glands, and kindly note it down because there can be questions on viva or as multiple choice questions. Okay, anterior pituitary, growth hormone, TSH, that means thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, that means ECTH, follicle stimulating hormone or FSH, luteinizing hormone, and prolactin. Hormones from the posterior pituitary, antidiuretic hormone or ADH, and oxytocin. thyroid, from thyroid gland, following hormones are secreted. These are T3, T4, and calcitonin. T3 is triiodothyronine, T4 is thyroxine, and another one is calcitonin. From the parathyroid gland, it is parathormone. From the pancreas, that means islets of Langerhans. These are following are the hormones insulin, glucagon, and somatostatin. I hope up till here the concept is clear. Again, hormones secreted by the major endocrine glands, adrenal cortex. These are the following hormones: mineralocorticoids. These are aldosterone, 11-deoxycorticosterone. Glucocorticoids are cortisol and corticosterone. Sex hormones are the androgens, estrogen, and progesterone. From the adrenal medulla, 1.1, that is the catecholamines. These are adrenaline or the epinephrine, noradrenaline or the norepinephrine, and the dopamine. I hope everything is clear up till now. So moving on forward, hormones secreted by the gonads, or these gonads, that means the hormones which are being secreted in the reproductive system purpose. In the males, the organ is the testes. The hormones secreted are the testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, and the androsterone. In the females, these are the ovary. These hormones are estrogen and progesterone. So I hope everything is clear up till now. So moving on forward, hormones secreted by the other organs: pineal gland, melatonin, thymus. The hormones secreted are thymosin, thymine. The kidney hormones secreted are erythropoietin, renin, and calcitriol. From the heart, the hormones are atyl natriuretic peptide, brain natriuretic peptide, and C-type natriuretic peptide. From the placenta, the hormones are human chorionic gonadotropin, human chorionic somatomamotropin, estrogen, and progesterone. I hope everything is clear. So, the introduction we have seen what all are the major hormones secreted by the major endocrine glands. These glands are called as the ductless glands because these do not have any duct, because these the hormones which are being secreted by these glands, these are directly being secreted into the blood. So the gland which we are going to study today, it is the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland, okay, it is consisting of consisting of two parts: the anterior pituitary gland called as the adenohypophysis, and the posterior pituitary gland which is called as the neurohypophysis. The hormones which are being secreted from the anterior pituitary are growth hormone, FSH, LH, prolactin, ECTH, and from the posterior pituitary gland, these are ADH and oxytocin. I hope everything is clear. So moving on forward, introduction, also known as hypophysis. Okay, as I already told you, it is a small gland that lies at the base of the brain. It is connected to the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, as we all know, it is the master endocrine gland by the pituitary stalk or the hypophyseal stalk. Pituitary stalk, pituitary gland. It is divided into two portions: anterior pituitary or adenohypophysis, posterior pituitary or the neurohypophysis. Even though the anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary are situated in close approximation, so my dear students, these both the glands, that is the parts of the pituitary gland, these are entirely different in their development, structure and function. And now coming on to the anterior pituitary. I hope everything is clear up till now. Anterior pituitary, the parts anterior pituitary is also divided into the following sub parts. So kindly note it down. These parts are the pars distalis, pars tuberalis, and the pars intermedia. The functional histology, depending on the staining property, the cells of the anterior pituitary. Now, the functional histology, that means how the cells are being seen under histological section after the staining. Okay, the cells of the anterior pituitary are clustered into two types: chromophobe cells. These do not have any granules, they stain poorly and are not secretory in nature. That means they do not secrete anything. Chromophil cells, they contain large granules, they are stained darkly, and according to the staining nature, these are of two types: acidophilic cells or the alpha cells, and basic cells or basophilic cells or the beta cells. Based on the secretory nature, the chromophil cells are further subclassified into five types. So kindly note it down. Somatotrophs, they secrete the growth hormone. This is the main and the most important hormone. Corticotrophs secrete ACTH or the adenocorticotropic hormone. Thyrotrophs, these secrete the TSH. Gonadotrophs, these secrete the FSH and LH. Lactotrophs, these secrete the prolactin. I hope everything is clear up till now. Somatotrophs and the lactotrophs are the acidophilic cells, whereas others are the basophilic cells. The acidophilic cells and the basophilic cells are the names given according to the staining property. So moving on forward, my dear students, hormones secreted by the anterior pituitary. Growth hormone or the somatotropic hormone, TSH, or the thyroid stimulating hormone or the thyrotropic hormone, adenocorticotropic hormone, FSH, luteinizing hormone in the females, and interstitial cell stimulating hormone in the males. Prolactin, FSH, and LH are together called as the gonadotropic hormones or gonadotropins. Kindly note down the spelling because of their action on the gonads. Recently, the hormone beta lipoprotein is found to be secreted by the anterior pituitary. This can be asked as an MCQ question in your final exam of the university exam. Okay, so kindly note it down. Again, I am repeating, recently the hormone beta lipoprotein is found to be secreted by the anterior pituitary. Now, my dear students, we have studied up till here about the anterior pituitary. Now, coming on to the posterior pituitary. I hope everything is clear. Now, the parts of the posterior pituitary, the parts are the pars nervosa or infundibular process, neural stalk or infundibular stem, and the median eminence. Functional histology. Again, as in the anterior pituitary, I have told you, same is here, that according to the staining property and how the cells are being seen under the microscope after the staining procedure, particular specific staining procedure, the histological thing is there. Posterior pituitary is made up of nerve cells called pituocytes and unmyelinated nerve fibers. Pituocytes act as supporting cells and do not secrete any hormone. Neurohypophysis also has numerous blood vessels, hyaline bodies, neuroglial cells, and the mast cells. Hormones of the posterior pituitary: antidiuretic hormone or the vasopressin, oxytocin. Okay, these are the major hormones. Two major hormones, I can say. Actually, the posterior pituitary does not secrete any hormone. ADH and oxytocin are being synthesized in the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, as we all know, and I have told you earlier also, that hypothalamus, it is the master endocrine gland. And these two hormones are also called as the neurohormones. Now, applied physiology of the pituitary gland or the disorders of the pituitary gland, as we all have to know, because in the MBBS point, from the MBBS point of view, or the first MBBS point, first proof MBBS point of view, and the BDS point of view, the applied physiology is also important. We should know some basic points. So, moving on forward. So first is the hyperactivity of the anterior pituitary. Now what does hyperactivity mean? Hyperactivity, that means the extra activity of the anterior pituitary gland. Okay. Moving on forward, first is the gigantism introduction, characterized by the excess growth of the human body. That means the excess linear growth of the human body, excess height of the human body. Height is between 7 to 8 feet. Causes due to hypersecretion of growth hormone in childhood or in the pre-adult life before the fusion of epiphyses of bone with the shaft. It occurs due to the pituitary tumors. Signs and symptoms: use height of 7 to 8 feet, hyperglycemic, develop glycosuria, pituitary diabetes, constant headache, visual disturbances, bitemporal hemianopy. These are some of the signs and symptoms, but the classic and the most important clinical feature is the use height of 7 to 8 feet before the fusion of the epiphyses of the bone with the shaft of the bone. Now again, hyperactivity of the anterior pituitary. Second is the acromegaly. We need to note it down that acromegaly, the basic major difference between gigantism and acromegaly is that gigantism, it occurs before the fusion of the epiphysis. That means before the age of 18 years, and acromegaly occurs after the fusion of the epiphyseal plate with the cartilage of the bone. Acromegaly introduction. It is the disorder characterized by the enlargement, thickening, and broadening of the bones, particularly in the extremities of the human body. Causes due to hypersecretion of growth hormone in adults after the fusion of epiphysis with the shaft of the bone. Hypersecretion of growth hormone is due to adenomatous tumor of anterior pituitary involving the acidophilic cells. Adenomatous tumor, that means the tumor of the anterior pituitary of the or the adenohypophysis. Signs and symptoms: protrusion of the supraorbital bones, broadening of the nose, thickening of the lips, thickening and wrinkles formation on the, like this, wrinkles formation on the forehead, protrusion of the lower jaw, prognathism, gorilla face, kyphosis, and bulldog scalp. The main and the important feature is the protrusion of the supraorbital bones. Okay, so moving on forward, another one is the acromegalic gigantism. It is a rare disorder with signs and symptoms of both gigantism and acromegaly. That is why it is called as the acromegalic gigantism. Hypersecretion of growth hormone in children before the fusion of epiphysis with the shaft of the bones causes gigantism, and if hypersecretion of the growth hormone is continued even after the fusion of epiphysis, the symptoms of acromegaly also appear. Cushing's disease, rare disease. It is correct. Another disorder. It is the Cushing's disease. It is a rare disease. The major feature is the obesity. Now, the hypoactivity of the anterior pituitary, dwarfism. Okay, as we have seen earlier that in the hyperactivity there was gigantism. So the opposite, gigantism, that means a height of 7 to 8 feet. In dwarfism, the height is less than the normal. This is a characteristic feature. Now coming on to the dwarfism introduction, it is a pituitary disorder in children characterized by the stunted growth, causes reduction in the growth hormone secretion in infancy or early childhood, causes dwarfism. Deficiency of growth hormone releasing hormone from the hypothalamus is there. Deficiency of somatostatin C, tumor of the chromosome cells, and panhypopituitarism. Signs and symptoms: stunted skeletal growth, maximum height. Now, this point, it is very much important to be noted here that the maximum height of a male or a female is 3 feet. It becomes slightly larger in proportion to the other parts of the human body. No mental retardation and reproductive functions are not affected. Now, coming on to the other diseases of the hyperactivity of the anterior pituitary, these are acromegaly. Introduction: it is a rare disease in adults characterized by the atrophy of the extremities of the human body. Causes deficiency of growth hormone releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. And as we all know, and I have said earlier, that hypothalamus, it is the master endocrine gland of the human body. Physiologically, we are saying it. Atrophy or degeneration of the acidophilic cells of the anterior pituitary, tumor of the chromophores, and again a very characteristic feature, it is the panhypopituitarism. Signs and symptoms: atrophy and thinning of the extremities of the body, hypothyroidism, hyposecretion of the adrenocortical hormones, person feels lethargic, मतलब उसको ठीक नहीं लगता है. Then obesity, loss of the sexual functions. Now, again, hypoactivity of the anterior pituitary. Simon's disease. Introduction. It is a very rare disease also called as pituitary cachexia. Causes occurs mostly in hypopituitary, panhypopituitarism. It means hyposecretion of all the anterior pituitary hormones due to atrophy or degeneration of the anterior pituitary. Signs and symptoms. मेजर फीचर इज द रैपिडली डेवलपिंग सेनल डिके. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि 30 साल का ओल्ड पर्सन लुक्स लाइक अ 60 year old person. Loss of hair all over the body, loss of all the teeth, the skin on the face becomes dry and wrinkled, shrunken appearance of the facial features. I hope everything is clear up till now, my dear students. So moving on forward, hyperactivity of the posterior pituitary. First clinical disease, it is the syndrome of inappropriate secretion of antidiuretic hormone or SIADH. Introduction: it is a disease characterized by loss of sodium due to hypersecretion of ADH or antidiuretic hormone, causes cerebral tumors, lung tumors, and the lung cancers. Signs and symptoms: loss of appetite, that means bhook nahi lagna, weight loss, nausea, vomiting, headache, muscle weakness, muscle spasm, muscle cramps, fatigue, restlessness, irritability. In severe conditions, the patients die due to convulsions and coma. Now, hypoactivity of the posterior hypo. So, just so moving on forward, my dear students, hypoactivity of the posterior pituitary, a disease called as the diabetes insipidus. Introduction: it is a posterior pituitary disorder characterized by excess excretion of water through the urine, causes degeneration of supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei of the hypothalamus, lesion in the hypothalamus hypophyseal tract, atrophy of the posterior pituitary, nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Signs and symptoms: polyuria, that means excretion of the large quantity of dilute urine with increased frequency of voiding. Polydipsia, intake of excess water. Okay. Dehydration, first center of the hypothalamus is affected, water intake decreases, and ultimately the dehydration develops. hypoactivity of the anterior and posterior pituitary, dystrophy adiposogenitalis. This is a very rare disorder. Introduction: it is a disease characterized by obesity and hypogonadism, affecting mainly the adolescent boys. It is also called as Froelich syndrome or hypothalamic enuchism. Causes it is due to the hyperactivity of both the anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. The common cause of this disease is the development of a tumor in the pituitary gland and the hypothalamic regions concerned with food intake and gonadal development. Okay. Signs and symptoms: obesity, overeating, sexual infantilism, failure to develop secondary sexual characters, enuchism, dwarfism, atrophy of the sex organs if the disease develops in the adults. I hope, my dear students, everything is clear. Now, coming on to one very important topic, that is the endocrine functions of the pancreas. Okay, moving on forward. In the endocrine functions of the pancreas, we are having the cells called as the islets of the Langerhans. That means it is having a group of the cells. The endocrine functions of the pancreas is performed or is being performed by the islets of the Langerhans. The human pancreas contain about 1 to 2 million islets. Islets of the Langerhans consist of the following four types of the cells: alpha cells which secrete the glucagon, beta cells which secrete the insulin, delta cells which secrete the somatostatin, and pancreatic polypeptide cells which secrete the pancreatic polypeptide. Insulin is the only hormone which brings down the blood glucose level to normal, whereas the glucagon is just having the opposite effect. Now, we would be studying something about insulin. Moving on forward. Introduction to insulin. Secreted by the beta cells of islets of Langerhans in the human pancreas. It is a polypeptide hormone with 51 amino acids. There are two amino acid chains. These are linked by the disulfide bridges. The amino acid chains are called as the alpha and the beta. Alpha chain contains 30 amino acids. Beta chain contains 21 amino acids. Now, actions of insulin. These are most important on the carbohydrate metabolism. It increases the transport and uptake of glucose by the cells, promotes peripheral utilization of glucose, promotes storage of glucose, that is glycogenesis, inhibits glycogenolysis, inhibits gluconeogenesis. On protein metabolism, facilitates the transport of amino acids into the cell from the blood, accelerates the synthesis of proteins, prevents the catabolism of proteins, prevents the conversion of proteins into the glucose. On fat metabolism, actions are synthesis of fatty acids and triglycerides, transport of fatty acids into the adipose tissue, and storage of fat. On the growth, promotes growth along with the growth hormone, enhances the transport of amino acids. I hope everything is clear up till now. So, moving on forward, mode of action of insulin. It is on the target cells. Insulin binds with the receptor protein and forms the insulin receptor complex. This executes the action by activating the intracellular enzyme system. I hope everything is clear. Regulation of secretion of insulin. It is regulated by the following factors: blood glucose level, role of proteins, role of lipid derivatives, role of GIT, that is the gastrointestinal tract hormones, role of endocrine hormones, and role of the autonomic nerves. Now, the second hormone which we are going to study, it is the glucagon. The As we have already studied earlier, that insulin is the only hormone which brings the blood glucose level to normal. So glucagon is the hormone which is having the action just opposite to insulin. That means it increases the blood glucose level. So, introduction to glucagon. It is secreted from the alpha cells of islets of Langerhans. These cells are found in the pancreas. It is a polypeptide hormone. It has 21 amino acids. Actions of glucagon on carbohydrate metabolism: increases the blood glucose level. On protein metabolism, increases the transport of amino acids into the liver cells. On fat metabolism, lipolytic action, ketogenic action. Other actions are inhibits the secretion of the gastric juice. Gastric juice, that means the juice which is found in the human stomach. Increases the secretion of bile from the liver. Mode of action of glucagon on the target cells, mostly the liver cells. Glucagon causes the formation of cyclic AMP, which brings out the actions of glucagon. Regulation of secretion of glucagon. Following factors play a major role in the regulation of glucagon. These are blood glucose level, amino acid level in the blood, other factors like what kind of exercise we are doing. If we are having any kind of stress, like the students are having stress of the exams, hormones like gastrin, insulin, and other factors like ketones. Another hormone which we are going to study, it is the somatostatin. The hormone somatostatin, it, it is also a hormone which is secreted by the islets of Langerhans in the human pancreas. Source of secretion, hypothalamus, and as we all know, and I have discussed earlier also, that hypothalamus, it is called as the master endocrine gland in the human body. B cells in the islets of Langerhans of the human pancreas secrete the somatostatin. B cells in the stomach and upper part of the small intestine. Somatostatin, it is a polypeptide. Actions: inhibits the secretion of both glucagon and insulin, decreases the motility of the stomach, duodenum, and gallbladder, reduces the secretion of the following hormones such as gastrin, CCK, GIP, and VIP. Mode of action: somatostatin brings out its action through cyclic adenosine monophosphate or cyclic AMP. Regulation of secretion. Secretion is stimulated by the following factors. These are glucose, amino acids, and cholecystokinin, pancreatic enzyme, that is CCK. Hyperglycemia can also occur. So, my dear students, in this lecture, we have studied about what all hormones are being secreted by the endocrine glands. What is the master endocrine gland in the human body? What all are the hormones being secreted from the human pancreas, that is the endocrine functions of the human pancreas, and overview of the hormones of the endocrine system, and as well as in detail about the pituitary gland, its two parts, that is the anterior pituitary gland or the adenohypophysis, and posterior pituitary gland or the neurohypophysis. So this is all for today's lecture. Thank you for kindly and patiently listening to me. Wishing you all the best. Thank you very much.